The Shibuya incident arc was a major turning point in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe. But what if the most powerful sorcerer, Gojo Satoru, had not held back? Now, if you remember, Gojo Satoru was temporarily removed from the story, and it was done so that epic battles, new conflicts, and even some of the most grievous moments could be experienced. However, Gojo deliberately restrained his power for a very good reason. To avoid mass murder, or if you want to phrase it less scarily, his inner voice. We all know Gojo is a superhero who'd do his best to save everyone. But during such monstrous havoc, things would have been a bit different. While Gojo couldn't save every single person, he'd still try to stop the killings of innocent people. And since his enemies knew that, they created a perfect, unavoidable plan to seal away Gojo in the prison realm during the Shibuya incident. And of course, the whole plot of Jujutsu Kaisen completely changes in the most terrifying ways as Gojo is sealed. But what if, in a parallel world of Jujutsu Kaisen, Gojo said, screw it, and went completely bonkers during the Shibuya incident? What would change? Would he still get sealed like a chicken on a farm? Or would he break away and go Madara on all the curses and the bad guys? Think about it. How would Gojo deal with some of the most dangerous enemies like Jogo, Dagon, Hanami, Choso, Mahito, and his childhood bestie, Geto? First of all, there would be a couple of good reasons for Gojo to go all in during the Shibuya incident, like putting on a Halloween spirit and mass murdering the cursed spirits just for the thrill. But that isn't the main point here. The main point is how Gojo would put an end to these curses for good and protect his students at the spooky Shibuya station. So before we dive into the story, let's set our boy Gojo free from the seal. He wouldn't be sealed by Pseudo Geto, and definitely wouldn't care about what happened to the transfigured humans at the station, because at this time, Gojo would have already made up his mind to kill all of them. Starting off with Gojo's battle with Jogo, Hanami, and Choso, he'd simply turn the tables. Hanami would be the first one to get knocked out, and following his death, Jogo and Mahito would face off against him. This time around, Gojo would use his domain expansion on all the transfigured humans, as well as Jogo and Mahito. But here's the catch. Would they not use their respective domain expansions against Gojo? Well, yes, they would. But since Gojo's unlimited void is inherently stronger than Jogo and Mahito, he'd clearly win this battle and destroy them like it's the casual Gojo Monday. Hence, they would also be trapped in the unlimited void along with Choso. Mahito would still be frozen as everyone was massacred by Gojo, and he wouldn't be able to do anything to stop the world's strongest sorcerer. So by the time Gojo would come across his childhood bestie Geto, he'd probably be mentally exhausted from all the killings. Now, what will Gojo do in this situation? In our scenario, Gojo would be aware of Geto's actual identity. He wouldn't fall into the Prism Realm trap. And perhaps he'd have trapped Pseudo Geto in the Ultimate Void. If Gojo had confronted Geto before the activation of Prism Realm, they would have fought. Since Gojo is very powerful, he'd have easily won the fight and stopped Geto. That's how Pseudo Geto's scheme would fall apart. Then, Mahito and Jogo's little competition of who's gonna catch Yuji would turn into one-sided hide-and-seek, with Gojo being the only seeker. So, the minute Gojo detects Mahito's presence, he wouldn't stand a chance. Gojo would probably exorcise Mahito in a heartbeat, given his ability to manipulate time and space. It would be an all-out battle against the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer and the most annoying cursed spirit. Mojito would even try to use his domain expansion, but to no avail. Gojo would simply use purple, and Mahito would go through one of the most terrifying moments of his life. The psychological terror Mahito would definitely try to flip on him, but Gojo's overwhelming power would result in the defeat of even the most cunning curse. How would Mahito's death play out here? Well, first of all, both Nanami and Nobara would be alive. Jogo had seriously injured Nanami before Mahito could get rid of him. His body was half burnt, but Nanami kept moving through Shibuya, still thinking of helping others. When he eventually met with Mahito, Nanami met his demise as Mahito touched him. Nanami's whole body exploded, ultimately leading to his death, which had left a severe impact on Yuji's mind because he was witnessing it all before his eyes. His heart was filled with extreme guilt for not being able to save his mentor. But luckily, in our scenario where Gojo already takes care of the special grade curses beforehand, things would not be so sad. Yuji would not feel a bit guilty about Gojo already defeating Mahito. He'd be mentally stable. Now, let's talk about Nobara, who met her demise at Mahito's hands through his technique called Idol Transfiguration. Mahito hit Nobara's face and caused a large part of it to explode. She was also left in a very bad state, looking like she was dead. But again, in this scenario, Nobara would be alive together with Nanami, as Gojo had already killed Mahito before things got out of control. With the survival of both Nanami and Nobara, the sorcerers could have felt more hopeful about their chances of survival against the curse technique. Then Meimei's fight would end before even starting. Gojo would have wiped out Shigeru Sonada, a character who challenged Meimei with her techniques. So, instead of deciding whether or not to spare her opponent, Gojo would have already removed the threat with just a flick of his finger. Because that's just how he does things, and the reason why he's one of the strongest sorcerers ever. Moreover, Naruto Zenin, the special grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer and the father of Naoya Zenin, would still have been alive. Gojo would have already defeated Jogo during the earlier battle, and this would have resulted in him saving more lives. Nanako and Mimiko would also be protected, since Gojo would quickly neutralize threats from multiple fronts, giving him the advantage of preventing the girls from being involved in Sukuna's revival plan. Since Jogo wouldn't have had the chance to feed Yuji the remaining 10 fingers, Sukuna's resurrection would have gotten delayed or prevented entirely. Now, Sukuna's emergence in the story was a dangerous and complete threat in and of itself, which again, Gojo would have stopped. And even if Sukuna had emerged, Gojo's abilities would have allowed him to seal or contain Sukuna's influence before it got out of control. And maybe we'd be able to see the epic battle between the best sorcerer and the King of Curses before it actually took place in the manga. With Gojo unsealed, one of the best and most anticipated battles of the Jujutsu Kaisen universe would have taken place in the Shibuya incident. Just imagine the King of Curses facing off against someone as chill as Gojo himself. This would have been the perfect opportunity to really see Gojo's limitless technique and Sukuna's terrifying ancient cursed power. The destruction would have been off the charts, buildings would crumble, cursed spirits would flee, and Gojo's students would also be backing him up in this crazy battle. They would also be able to put an end to Sukuna forever. However, the only problem here is that this battle would take place with Sukuna inside Yuji's body. So, would Gojo really go all in to defeat and hurt his own student? Nobody knows the answer, but one thing is for sure, Gojo would take a cautious strategy. Knowing that Yuji is a vessel for Sukuna, he would aim to neutralize threats while being careful not to harm Yuji. He might use techniques that incapacitate the enemies without causing direct damage to his Yuji. And if Sukuna tried to control during a fight, Gojo would have to remain alert. He might even use this to his advantage, drawing Sukuna out and trying to confront him directly once he's out of Yuji's body. Gojo would also rely on his immense strength and powers to confront Sukuna directly without fully engaging Yuji. This would result in emotional conflicts with Yuji. He would hesitate at such a crucial moment as Sukuna tried to use him as a threat before Gojo. There are many other possibilities as to why Gojo does not hold himself back in the Shibuya incident. For example, changing the plans of the cursed spirits. The fight could prolong up to months or years, since the cursed spirits, especially Mahito and Jogo, would have to quickly adapt to Gojo's powers. They might feel the need to retreat or even reconsider battling, knowing they faced a powerful opponent who wasn't holding back. Lastly, the most important question is, what kind of character development would Gojo go through after experiencing the consequences of surpassing his own limits to save the people he loves? Although Gojo has always had an idea of his godlike powers, this may lead him to thinking all of the lives he killed in Shibuya. It's like Gojo would become Itachi Uchiha, mass murdering not out of just fun, but to put an end to the cursed spirits. This realization could drive Gojo into deep internal conflict, and he may not remain the lively character that he is. With Gojo's character development in the Jujutsu Kaisen world, he would want to reform the world of Jujutsu by taking a more active role and becoming a leader who introduces new methods of dealing with curses and sorcerers. Therefore, a simple question: what if Gojo didn't hold back at Shibuya, opened up a new, complex web of possibilities that could change the story of Jujutsu Kaisen in the long run? So what do you think about what could happen if Gojo didn't hold back at Shibuya? Comment down below and like and subscribe to our channel for more videos. See you next time!